Hello, everyone. Welcome to Matters Now, where we're going to talk about a debate coming up on modern day debate. It's between inspiring philosophy, otherwise known as Michael Jones, and True Islam UK. I believe the debater is Tahir Nasser. And I did contact him on Twitter to see if he'd come to the after show, but he said he won't be available for the after show. Sorry, I'm a minute late now. Turn on my light. I was talking to somebody on Discord, setting up other stuff. I'm feeling better if people were worried about my health, but I still have some. Doctor said it's not gout, some other type of infection. I don't know what it is. But so we're going to do a panel discussion, and I'm going to have prompts about what we're going to talk about during the different segments of the panel. I've done a bunch of prep today for this conversation, so hopefully people enjoy all the work. It might not be that interesting of a topic, but I think there's a lot to learn today about Tahir and his form of Islam or Muslim beliefs that is controversial within the wider Muslim community. And people are already insulting him in the friggin' live chat. Go figure. And calling him I don't even want to say it's not like that bad. It's a murtad, but basically like a really bad apostate. So like some Muslims would say like death penalty, but I am doing an after show. And with that, I want to bring on the panelists. I got Issa and Dr. J. I think I'm going to keep this panel sort of small today. If people wish to come up on the chat, let me know. But like you guys understand the topic, I think, better from both sides than I do, definitely. So what do you think about this? Are you both going to be able to watch the debate today?
Yeah, I might have to work some, so I'm hoping that after we're done with this, I'll be able to get some work done and then maybe watch it at double speed and catch back up for the after show. But I'm certainly planning on joining the after show if I can. I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it should be a good show, I think. What about you, Issa? I saw the thumbs up, so I take that as yeah.
But, I'll be there for sure.
All right. Okay, so I figured we could start off by talking about inspiring philosophy, Michael Jones, who he is.
I'm familiar with him. He comes on the David Wood, Dr. Wood, and AP show. He has a lot of tattoos. Seems like a cool guy.
Yeah, he's like a Christian apologist, right? I think he's focused a lot on the philosophical concepts and the apologetics around Christianity. Mary's in the other room. Hopefully she's not too loud. Can you hear her?
Oh, it's Mary.
Dang it. With doors closed and everything. What about Michael or Michael Jones, do you think, Dr. J?
So inspiring philosophy, I don't know a ton about him. So I don't know. I assume he'll bring some of the normal things that we hear, you know, if he's kind of in league with those other guys that Issa mentioned. I'm assuming he'll bring up a lot of the same arguments, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be on the topic of this is very specific too. Did Jesus die during the crucifixion? The topic is not was Jesus crucified? The topic
that'll be interesting to see what they say, because that'll move the direction of the debate, right? Like, you know, surely these guys have some things that they normally talk about, and this narrows sort of the field theoretically of kind of the issues that they'll be able to bring up.
Yeah, because I'll show you what I've learned about Ahmadi Muslims.
Ahmadi, yeah.
Ahmadi. I can't do that H sound.
Ahmadi. No, it's fine. Yeah, there's a lot of difficult sounds, yeah.
And am I correct? Is murtad considered sort of derogatory when they're using
it's a terrible word. A murtad is an apostate. It's basically it's doing this thing called takfir. Takfir means that you're saying the person is not really a Muslim, that they've left the fold of Islam. This is a trick that a lot of people play. And the problem when people play this game is I hate when people do this, like this heresy stuff, the blasphemy stuff. I'm like, you could say, hey, for example, I'm going to use like Christian language here, but you could say, hey, you know, for example, if someone is, let's say you're a Trinitarian and someone's a Unitarian, say, look, they're a Christian, but I don't agree with them. I don't want to fellowship with them. Fine. Like I don't see why you have to call them not a Christian. You know, and that's the same thing that I would say within Islam, that you could say, look, maybe we disagree spiritually and philosophically on certain points. Maybe I just am not going to hang out with you, but I'm not going to go and take the position of saying, well, you're not really this. It's just such a dangerous, slippery slope, and it's bad stuff. I hate when people do that. How do you know you're good and moral and right? You know, I don't know. I think it's bad, personally.
Murtad, I can't pronounce that either.
Murtad.
It sounds like a
like a character from like a Dungeons and Dragons, like one of the like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of game. You know, that could be one of the characters. It's
Muad'Dib, right? Muad'Dib.
Well, but that's where it's coming from. Dune.
I know.
Frank Herbert is using Buddhist and Islamic universe to create his world. He's using these terms and terminology to create his world and future world. So he's going to use Arabic for sure. Frank Herbert used a lot of Arabic and stuff. So this work is really cool though.
So I got a short clip of Michael that I'm going to play. Let's see if I can find it here. I think it's. Make sure. Yep, it's this one. Okay. From Inspiring Philosophy, Michael Jones. Is he the son of E. Michael Jones? Do we know? I think he might be. But... Okay, Jesus never claimed to be a Christian, and he fell on his face numerous times to pray. Does that mean he was more of a Muslim? So this, you hear this, like, because he fell on his knees to pray, that means he was actually a Muslim. So some, because they do believe that that Jesus was a Muslim. Muslims do.
Or it proves he was a Hindu. Sorry, I mean Buddhist. I mean, technically, this could just prove he's Catholic. And there's also that place in Mark 11 where Jesus talked about praying while standing. And there's also the fact that Jesus never commanded we have to pray in a certain position. And we can find the act of prostration in numerous religious and cultural beliefs. So perhaps we shouldn't assume what Jesus believed from the position he would sometimes pray in.
Yeah, so this is what I like about Michael Jones. He's very nuanced with that. So he's not saying it's false. He's saying, like, you can use this to explain any position. So so what did I have next? Banner.
I saw the debate with him and I think it was Dan, and they were debating about the thing that we don't talk about on the show.
Oh yeah, I don't want to talk about that shit.
Yeah, but the thing was, and that's a lot of information came out about Dan from the conversation Inspiring Philosophy had with Muslim Skeptic. So, you know, and I think, just to say, I think Inspiring Philosophy did a good job pushing that forward, because I don't know, I think it's an unacceptable thing to promote personally, but we're not going to talk about that thing. So
yeah, let's not talk about that. But so all I knew was that he was True Islam UK. I asked James where he was. He said, that's all I know. I was like, oh, great. So I went to True Islam UK, the YouTube channel, and I found one of these images that looked like him a little bit, and they called him Dr. Tahir Nassar. Is that right? Nasser, right? Tahir Nasser. It's on the screen.
Oh, it says, yeah. You could say, Nasser. It's probably like Nasser. Tahir Nasser. Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then I tracked him. I found other videos with him in it and found out who he was. And then I found his Twitter. And so he is a doctor, by the way, a medical doctor. in the UK, dealing with intensive care. He's part of a group called rationalreligion.co.uk. They think they are the true Islams, the true Muslims, or the Ahmadi or Ahmadi, whatever, Muslims. And I love that he has this
Ahmadis.
about it.
Ahmadis.
Ahmadi.
Oh,
Anyways,
he's a total Desi. This is a total Desi guy here. Very South Asian.
oh, yeah, you can see a picture of him there. So that's to here. And I found a clip. So I made like a little short of his that we can go over too.
Then, dressed as a gardener, finds his followers. They say, "Are you a ghost?" He says, "No, I'm not a ghost." The definition of a ghost is somebody who died, right? And then is seen after the act of dying. So the fact that he says, "I am not a ghost," is literally him saying, "I did not die." So people say, "Oh, where's the evidence that Jesus didn't die on the cross?" Well, he said he didn't die on the cross. He said he didn't die. Okay?
And he said he wouldn't die before.
Exactly. He said he wouldn't die before. He prayed not to die. As he thought he was dying,
he said his sign would be not dying.
Yes, exactly. As he thought he was dying, he said, "Why have you forsaken me, God?" And then afterwards, he's like, "I'm not a ghost."
Yeah.
And then he eats bread and fish with them. And Doubting Thomas, what does Doubting Thomas do?
He puts his fingers into his wounds because he can't believe that Jesus is really there in the flesh in front of him.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's why I wanted you, Dr. James. Is that what the Bible's saying? Like, is that interpretation Christian?
It seems like you could understand Jesus saying, "I'm not a ghost," to mean something else. It seems like the option that they chose was pretty handpicked. I mean, it seems like they take some things that he said before, they take that thing that he said after, then they ignore all the events that happened in between, and I guess pretend they didn't happen. They act like they're taking the Bible really seriously, right, at the beginning and the end, but seem to ignore all the actual story of Jesus dying in the middle. So I'll be interested to hear him flesh that out.
So you hear it very specifically. Yes, of course, Jesus was crucified, but when he went to the tomb, he swooned and passed out. He passed out from loss of blood or whatever that you usually swoon, and that he came back, recovered from passing out, and he never actually died. And they believe he's. So I don't know if you ever heard the India narrative, or India, where
You're talking to a Desi person here. Of course, I'm going to know about it.
Of course. So where he ended up in Kashmir, and
Kashmir.
I'm not even going to try to correct it because I won't do it right. And
I'm just playing with you. Don't worry. Go ahead.
It's okay. And the topic, somebody asked what the topic is. I don't want to talk about is Aisha, and that's all I'm going to say on it. So that they believe they know exactly where he's buried. Some Yar is his year. I have it written up. We can go through that too. But so they have a whole narrative of what happened to Jesus after he didn't die on the crucifixion. So it seems like the debate's going to be very nearly focused on what did he actually die when he was crucified, or did he not die when he was crucified? I've seen some secular explanations that say he didn't die. That I read a book as a teenager where they said a lot of times the crucifixion was a specific period of time, and that they didn't always die from crucifixion. Usually it's from compression of the chest, right? You suffocate when you're being crucified. But they go to extra steps with Jesus by nailing him on the cross, hands and feet, and then stabbing him with a spear just to make sure he actually did die. And they say, well, that's not really historical. Why would they give him such special treatment? So I've read those concepts before. So, and it's not far-fetched if you ask me, but I don't know if that's convincing to somebody like you, Dr. J.
Well, I mean, like, just imagine you're reading a imaginary story that didn't happen, and you read the story. Would you think he died? Of course you would. Yeah. So the only reason you would say he didn't die is because you're trying to say, well, I think it's a real story, but there's no miracles, so I've got to kind of figure out a way to fit those together. And the swoon theory isn't like an impossible way to fit those things together. It's like, as good as theories I've heard either way. But it seems like the text is saying that he died, and so if you reject that, that's fine. I understand you can reject that, but that does seem to be the most obvious reading of what may have happened.
Right. And just for show notes, the debate's supposed to start in 23 minutes. It's a 3:40 p.m. show. It's early in the days, but it looks like Tahir is in the UK, so that makes sense, like a 5-hour difference for him. So I plan for it to be an entertaining show, actually. I think these people, both of them, what you saw on that video, he seems to be a very cordial guy. He does a lot of these type of Islamic apologist shows and stuff like that. And I want to pull up some tweets. They're tweets I posted today. Let's see.
Do you want me to talk a little bit about what Ahmadiyya is? Because that might
Yeah.
be helpful. So it's
Well, that's
kinda
what I was
cool.
going to pull up, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I can talk. I know a lot about it.
Maybe I can prime you with these.
Sure, you can ask me
summaries.
anything about this stuff. So
Okay, so the
as a
first thing,
yeah, go ahead,
well, let me show you.
please.
So the first thing I had, well, how come it didn't change? There it is. So that they view the Quran as God's final message, but God still communicates with chosen. Muhammad as a last law-bearing prophet, pinnacle of spiritual evolution. New prophets may arise, but be subordinate to Muhammad, reflecting his teachings without introducing new laws. And they believe
Sure.
like there's a current caliphate, right? So they
Yes.
re-select a caliphate date, and they selected a UK caliphate in 2023, I believe. So they have a British caliphate. But go ahead. I don't
I
want
can
to.
talk all about this. I'm pretty well versed. So first and foremost, the Ahmadiyya movement is very Desi, and I'll explain what that means. Desi is South Asian. So South Asia is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. It's this kind of region. It's the South Asian region, and that's culturally where that's a part of what I am too. So I would be called a Desi or a South Asian person. So, and you can see physically me and this guy actually look pretty much a lot alike, because we come from the same kind of region. Except I'm not from the UK, I don't have the
Yeah.
very posh British accent like him. But, um, the thing is, so the Ahmadiyya movement, so this is before Pakistan and India, like what we know as India and Pakistan existed. It was in the 19th century. There was this teacher, his name was Sheikh Ghulam Ahmed. This is where the term Ahmadiyya comes from. He came from a region called Qadian. And the people who are against Ahmadiyya call them Qadianis. There's actually a split within this movement. He basically was, for all intents and purposes, a Sufi sheikh. He would fit into this kind of framework. But this idea of what prophethood kind of arises, this is why
Just
people
be clear. Sufi versus Shia, but Sufis believe they have like
okay. So
a
I'll
different
explain what
lineage from Muhammad, right? So
Sunnis and Shias can both be Sufi. So that person who comes in, his name's Salman. What is it? Samir. Samir probably is Sufi or Sufi adjacent because he's from Morocco. So North Africans are usually Sunni Sufis. You can have both of these identities. You can be Sunni and Sufi. Sufi is another identity as well. And there are some people who are Sufi and not Muslim. It's very complex. It's a huge dynamic. Like someone like Ellen Bernstein is a Sufi. I heard Peter Dinklage might be too. But he probably fit. Yeah, he would fit under the
I met
Naqshbandi.
Peter.
Oh, you met Peter Dinklage? So the Naqshbandi is so there's like Sufi lodges. Like it's very, people like who know about Freemasonry, there's things that are very interconnected with that as well. People have their kind of esoteric knowledge that they go into, but that's besides the point. So Sheikh Ghulam Ahmed, so there's actually split within the contention of why people have a problem. So this teacher, going back to the history, this teacher went around and he debated like Muslim scholars and stuff like that. And he was kind of like a big deal in South Asia. And he was in the South Asian states because it was under the British Raj. He would have been, and he was in a place called Qadian. It would be now called modern day Pakistan. Pakistan didn't exist then at that time. So he was there and he was this great like spiritual teacher. He debated a lot of people and he kind of had his own mystical movement. I'm trying to make this like really simple because it's more complex. So he had a spiritual movement Um, and he basically was kind of viewed as this kind of messianic prophetic character. And so that's the point that they're the way they worded it's so wordy and complex. What they're saying basically is that they do believe that there's this kind of tradition of prophethood. The traditional and there's actually a split within the Ahmadiyya community. You have the Lahori Ahmadis, and you have the more like what Tahir probably is your kind of the more common standard Ahmadiyya. So the Lahoris are basically just Sufi. They don't actually contend any problems with the rest of even the Sunni Muslim community. They believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad is a Sufi sheikh, like a teacher. He's a spiritual guide. And
well, they also believe he brought in the seventh cycle, or
right.
Like there's a 7 cycles, and this is the last cycle.
It's very similar to Baha'i. Ahmadiyya is very parallel to Baha'i, where you see the Baha'i tradition where the Bab and Baha'u'llah are kind of these spiritual guides that come out of actually Shia Islam, and they're kind of like mystics. The Bab is sort of, they try to parallel to Christianity, where the Bab is sort of like John the Baptist and Baha'u'llah is the Christ, but it's the similar kind of narrative that you have these kind of spiritual figures that are kind of prophetic, they're kind of messianic, and they're here to kind of lead and bring people into truth. And they all come out of actually Islamic tradition. So that's what's kind of funny. People are like, oh, Baha'ism. I'm like, yeah, it's an Islamic movement. And people don't know that, but it is. It's an Islamic movement.
So let me be clear. They believe like there's multiple 7,000 year periods, but this is the last 1,000-year period of
right.
This is the last period.
The yugas are like ages. Desi Islam is very influenced by South Asian culture. There's these things called yugas, which are like these epochs or ages. So it's very funny when Desi Muslims, South Asian Muslims, are like, oh, I have nothing to do with like Vedic stuff. I'm like, yeah, you do. Even if you're a Vedic Christian, you're a South Asian Christian, you're very much tied to these South Asian cultural traditions. It's just a part of what you are. Just like if you're an American, or you're of European ancestry, you're tied to that European culture. It doesn't like leave you. You're interconnected with it. So South Asians are deeply interconnected with their ancestral culture. So that this idea of these 7,000 years, it makes sense. This is the epochs and the eons that kind of continue. You have these ages. So in the Sufi tradition, which is very popular in South Asia, you have these things called mujaddids or muhyiddin. And like a muhyiddin and a mujaddid are like these people who are revivers. So Mirza Ghulam Ahmad would be considered a kind of like a mujaddid or a muhyiddin who's reviving the spiritual faith.
And wasn't part of the revival was, and it's sort of the 19th century revival too, is that correct? He was sort of 19th century?
Yeah, he's in the 1800s. Yeah, that's the 19th century is the 1800s.
Okay, so good.
Yeah,
but he also reinterpreted jihad to mean that you don't respond in violence to jihad, you respond because the jihad against Islam is by word or by, that. So jihad would mean respond by word. The only time you should use violence is in self-defense. So he also, I think that was part of his teachings. Am I off on that?
Oh yeah, because he's a mystic. He fits right into the spiritual tasawwuf mystical teaching, and which is where most South Asians were, at least at that time. Now, unfortunately, there's been a lot of Arabization, and a lot of South Asians have tried to be Arabs. Unfortunately, it's a kind of very sad movement. There's a lot of like self-hating and self-loathing that I've seen, anthropologically speaking. But
and their fourth caliph in 1989, I don't know his name, but they firmly came out rejecting all forms of terrorism in the late 20th century.
Yeah, definitely.
They said there's no justification for violence at all. So and they're not a major Muslim group. I think they have like 25 million followers worldwide, but they're almost in every country in the world. I've
seen them all the time. We have a thing called Muslim Days in Pennsylvania, and they're basically the folks who spearhead it. And they're mostly from Pakistan, the folks, but a lot of African Americans have joined up that I've noticed, like anthropologically speaking. But it's a very South Asian movement, origin wise. It's like when you see like the LDS movement, it has a very strong American basis. It's very South Asian. In the way that it kind of moves, in movement. The Ahmadiyyas are, like I said, they're Sufi. I would call them Sufis. They fit under the Sufi spectrum. And And I would say for the most standard, they're pretty much Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they're Sunni. They just have this one contention that a lot of Muslims get mad about because they're like, there is no more prophet. There's only
Yeah.
Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, no prophet after.
Until
And
Jesus.
yeah, and it's funny. It's a very fun. Well, Jesus will not be technically a prophet when he comes
He's
back.
the
He's the
Messiah.
Messiah. But the idea is he won't have the status. But the thing is, they actually have a good argument. The Ahmadiyya make a fair argument through Arabic. The argument is that they say that the Prophet Muhammad is Khatamul Nabiyyin. What does that mean in English? See, I'm a little different than the other panelists who come here. I like to explain everything. I'm not just going to say a bunch of Arabic
I know. I
words
want to
and
make
make
sure
people
we
get mad.
cover all the portions of it, though, too. But yeah,
Sure. But I think it's important that we understand the basic, like just deconstructing and making it simple. So Khatamul Nabiyyin means the seal of the prophets. And I could break down what their point is on Jesus too. So they're saying that the seal of the prophets is not Nabiul Khalasin, which means the final prophet. He's the seal. That means you can still have more prophets. The Prophet Muhammad functions as a seal of the prophets. That's the argument that they make. And the point about Jesus, their argument on Jesus is basically that Jesus was put on the cross, but he survived the crucifixion, and then he was able to kind of escape, and he went to South Asia, and he passed away in Kashmir. So he was teaching in Kashmir. That's one argument. Another argument is that during the lost years of Jesus, he went to India, and that's why you have all the South Asian mysticism that you see in like the Jewish understanding and Christianity. So these are arguments that are made.
and they actually say they know exactly where he's buried, right?
I mean, that's an argument that, folks might make. They said that the Ark of the Covenant is in Ethiopia, so we don't know.
Yeah, they think they know what tomb. It's just I can't. I had it open a minute ago, but they claim to know exactly what tomb he's buried in. But so one of the thing I read about that they're a little bit non-traditional, that they believe no Quranic verse abrogates another. So I believe that means they don't detract from each other. They're all true. There's no like some people I think take a chronological perspective of where it is. The later verses have more meaning than the earlier verses, but they don't do that. Is that fair? And what does that mean?
I'll explain what that means. Sure. I'm glad that I'm here. I can explain all this stuff. So what does abrogation mean? So basically in the Quran, there's this idea that in one verse it says, hey, you can drink alcohol.
Quick. Hey, I want to say hi to Michael. Thank you so much, Inspiring Philosophy, checking us out. So we're covering your opponent now. We pretty much all knew who you were, and you're welcome to the after show too if you want to come hang out with us all.
Cool. So the Ahmadiyya argument, basically, and you know what? Here's a cool thing that you may not know. Dr. Wood's best buddy, Nabil Qureshi, he was Ahmadiyya from Pakistan. So it's actually very, very hard for Ahmadiyya. They're not treated well in Pakistan. They're considered as murtad. They say that they have to put Ahmadiyya on their passport. They can't say they're Muslim. And it makes it very hard if they want to go on Hajj and they want to go to Mecca. It's a very difficult situation. And there's a lot of persecution of the Ahmadiyya in Pakistan. Even though they're all South Asian people, this thing about the prophethood is this huge problem for them.
I think so what I read was that in 1973, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, instead of trying to read it, I'll just say it, declared that they were not Islam. So like the broader Muslim community says they're not Muslim.
Yeah, and who has the right to say that? I take the position of pluralism. It's so cool. I'm at the Barnes Foundation and I'm taking a class on Islamic art. It's so cool. And my teacher was really awesome about this. We were talking about how and that's my position too. Islam is pluralistic. It's ridiculous when people try to say, oh, you can't fit my tea because you're different than me. I'm like, look, you can disagree on theology, but I think you don't have to say someone isn't something just because they don't fit your narrative. That's my position. I'm very leftist and progressive in religious thought. So that's where I personally stand, which is going to be different than most people. I'm very tolerant and accept debates, but I want to engage your point about the abrogation. So there's these verses like, for example, we have to understand that Islam is completely tied to the Israelite tradition, which is why I think Daniel really failed when he attacked Judaism. Like, dude, this is a fool's errand when you play this game. Because when you attack Judaism, you attack Islam. It's the same thing. If you're a Christian and you attack Judaism, you're going to attack Christianity. You can't attack the Jewish thought. And people are like, well, I'm going to attack Talmud. I'm like, look, just leave it alone. The Talmud is like a huge, giant, space of stuff of literature, but that's enough for another story. But the point of abrogation was, so in the Jewish law, there's this thing about drinking alcohol. You can't. The idea was that you're allowed to drink, but you can't drink to be drunk. That's the Jewish law. Except and then when you see Jewish tradition, except on Purim, which is this holiday where the Israelites survived this guy named Hamon, who was this like really terrible, horrible guy that wanted to kill all the Israelites in Persia. But and it's a story about Queen Esther. But basically, what happens is the law was that Muslims could drink alcohol, but they couldn't drink until they got drunk. Then what happened was people were drinking while they were making salat, while they were praying. And Desi people call it namaz, which is from Persian. That's another whole story. But they were drinking until they were drunk on prayer, and they said, we're not doing this anymore. So basically my understanding of this is that they're saying, hey, the Quran is all true. You can't say that there is verses that are no longer valid. They're all true in essence. And my understanding of probably what they're going to argue is it's spiritually understood. So you can't say they're false because it's the Quran. And I think that's an interesting answer, because the people who say that there are these abrogations create a problem for themselves theologically that I think the Ahmadiyya are trying to engage. They're saying, hey, if you're saying these verses are no longer valid, now this means that the Quran is corrupted, that the Quran, part of the Quran is not true, some of the Quran is true. So they're challenging that narrative by saying, no, the whole Quran is true. So that's my understanding, to try to explain it in like a minute.
Okay, we have like 6 more minutes, but they're always late. So I just want to cover one more thing. Their second caliphate was a Nobel laureate, Abdus Salam. I'm not sure what he won a Nobel laureate in, but he highlighted the call for Quran, or for Muslims to study the nature of reality and rational thinking, making knowledge central to their faith. So they sort of like value scientific inquiry and scientific research, sort of like a Renaissance version of Islam. Are you familiar with that at all, or?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. What they're saying is, hey, Islam is not this archaic, barbaric religion. It's a religion that can spiritually evolve, that it's open. And that's what they're saying. Like when you look at the Ahmadiyya websites, what they're saying is, hey, we're peaceful oriented. We're spiritually oriented. We're a part of the modern day age. We're in this era. We're not in some archaic, barbaric era. And that's what the Ahmadiyya are saying. This is what Ismailis are saying. This is what there are a lot of Muslim movements that have this message. But unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are, dark age medievalists who want to bring us into the 7th era, 7th century.
He won a Nobel Prize in physics in 1979. Physics. Not like economics. Go ahead, Dr. J.
Yeah, one thing you said that's interesting. Within Christianity, the people that think that like new stuff means the old stuff's wrong. So like maybe saying slavery is okay in the Old Testament, but then it became not okay, and therefore the Old Testament was kind of wrong and it got fixed or something like that. Anything where the new would fix the old, those would be the liberals and not true Christians for most people. Does that make sense? Like most people within Christianity would say it's all true, 100% true, all scriptures give inspiration of God, so on and so forth. So it's kind of interesting that in this case within Islam, the sort of outside looking in is a little more on the people that think it's all true and that they have to figure out a way to have it all work together.
We have a question for you too from Thread Insanity to Isa.
I'd love to answer it.
Do you read it? So they are like heretics to the other Muslims.
And I engage this. I think this is such a silly game. It's like saying, hey, everybody's going to call someone else a heretic. Do you think that these Muslim people, someone like certain folks who have maybe appeared on modern day debates, you don't think some people view them as heretics as well? Everybody plays the heresy game. So it's such a silly thing. I think people should not play that game at all. This is my position. I'm like, look, just do your own thing. You don't have to engage other people. If you don't agree with those people, you don't got to need to go near them. You can just say, hey, we don't agree. I'm not hanging out with you. You don't have to say they're not Muslim or they're doing heresy. You know what I mean? It's just not. It's so
That
unsustainable.
Sounds like to me as Issa said yes, and he's not happy about it.
Yeah, but it sounds
true.
like it sounds like the majority of the Muslim community has done that to this one group. It's not like a minority
these are
position.
Sunni Muslims though, but the majority of Muslims are Sunni though.
90% are Sunni.
Yeah, they're Sunni, and that's the message that went out. So it's like, does that mean that that's just a bandwagoning fallacy? Okay, a bunch of Sunni Muslims have a problem. Okay, that doesn't mean it's Islam. It means that these Sunni Muslims have a problem. Like, for example, is Judaism, Pharisaic Judaism is the most popular form of Judaism we have now. But if someone disagrees with Pharisaic Judaism, is that not Judaism? No. Like, I'm not going to say a Messianic Jew is not a Jew. Whether a Pharisaic Jew says the Messianic Jew is not a Jew, that's their prerogative, not mine. If the Messianic Jew says, I'm Jewish, but I believe Jesus is my Messiah, who is to say they're not Jewish? You know?
It's a no true Scotsman fallacy because they're not demonstrating why it is the case they are not a true Muslim. They're just making the claim without being able to demonstrate that they know the truth. Like, that's a problem with underdeterminism with any claim.
They don't.
Like all the different Christian sects, Muslim sects. But at first I was saying I was tweeting or whatever, that they're like the JW version of Christianity because they're ostracized. But if anything, they're the opposite because they're calling for scientific enlightenment and like reduction of global violence. They go out and they preach this. They meet world leaders and stuff like that. They write papers, do all this stuff to try to promote world peace. Entirely opposite. Well, maybe not opposite, but they want to be involved where like the JWs don't. So I disparaged the.
Do you know what's hilarious? You brought up that person. Do you know where that person was from? The person who got the Nobel Prize. He was born in Punjab state. And I love that because that's how it was in South Asia. They were all different states. You had Punjab state, Tamil state, Bengal state. They were all different. There wasn't like an India or Pakistan or Bangladesh. These things didn't really exist.
Well,
there were a bunch of South Asian states. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's do our predictions really quick. The show should be starting. We'll move to it when it does. But who's your prediction for tonight, Issa?
It's going to be really hard. Because I just think, I don't know why, I don't really know what you can really argue. It's like you either agree with these things or not. The position that Tahir is going to be arguing is like a South Asian perspective that a lot of people don't know. They're not going to understand. He's going to have to do a lot of groundwork to get people to get that perspective. It's going to be a lot easier for inspiring philosophy, I think, because inspiring philosophy, most people are going to understand his perspective. They're going to understand what Christianity is about. They understand the narrative. They're not going to, this other narrative is very kind of like fringe for most people. You know what I mean? So it's going to be very, very hard to demonstrate this. Many Muslims don't take this perspective. So it's going to be a tough one for Tahir.
So you're calling IP?
I'm thinking that it's gonna be much easier for him. So I'm gonna probably call it for him right now. But I hope Tahir has a good chance.
He'll do well.
But it's gonna be difficult. It's just you have a lot of groundwork to do.
Let's talk to Dr. J. So
I'm definitely taking inspiring philosophy. I think that it's going to be hard to thread this needle of like, yeah, Jesus was a good guy, but he didn't really die. And so the Bible's kind of like kind of right, but kind of wrong. These parts are right. These parts are wrong. Because he can't like completely throw out the Bible. That'd be a lot easier for him. But he kind of has to like say Jesus isn't like the worst ever, but he just didn't die. That's going to be a tough needle to thread. So I'm thinking inspired philosophy is going to have an easier time. You know, they both seem well spoken, so I don't know what to say as far as their ability to debate, but I definitely think the needle threading is going to be too difficult here, and then inspiring philosophy is going to take it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think IP will win. I think this guy's a really nice guy. I think he'll make a good argument. And this thing I linked was from 3 or 4 years ago, and it was a 9-minute long thing. I didn't watch the whole thing, so he might have a bit more sophisticated argument for his claim now. So I think it'll be interesting to listen to this, because to me it's like something I knew from my dad, because he loved talking about these various, like Jesus going to Europe, Jesus going to India. There's all these claims about how Jesus coming to America, right? With the Muslim or the Mormons. I posted the link in the live chat if the redirect doesn't work, but as soon as the debate starts, we will go to the debate. If you have any questions for any of the panelists, let us know. But tag me, or just, there's not many people watching, so it won't be that hard to see.
Something unimportant I could bring up, because we might get interrupted, is, I know that for me, the Christianity, like the tree of how complicated it is, all fits in my head because I've been studying it for years, but I have a really hard time putting the Islam, Shiite, Sunni thing together very well. And when I hear it verbally, I'm not even used to the words, so it's kind of hard for me to put it together. I'm wondering if there's maybe a little chart that's out there, maybe, and that we could periodically refer to try to help us put it together. I don't know, because I just have a hard time tracking it, and I got to remember that when I'm talking about Christianity, people might be having the same problem trying to be able to fit it all together.
Yeah, I'm just
I can help you too. I can try to help explain and make it simple. I'll look for a chart for you too, but
I found one.
I can kind of explain it pretty simply. It's just basically the Sunni Shia difference is it's political. So Sunnis say, hey, the caliphs are valid. The Shia say only Ali is valid, and the Ahlul Bayt, the family of the Prophet, is valid. So Prophet, family of Prophet. Sunnis say, hey, good people, the friends and the folks of the Prophet, they're good and they're important. And so that's really the major difference between the two.
They even call them Mahdiist groups. It's like it's a Mahdiist group according to this chart. Like, isn't that derogatory?
What kind of
Mahdi apostrophe ist.
Mahdiist. Sorry. Okay, yeah, that's a little difficult with hearing American pronunciations. No, it's okay. It's totally fine. I'm American too, so I know what it is. Mahdi. So the Mahdi is this idea of this person who will come and save everybody. They're kind of these messianic figures. So there are a lot of Mahdiysts that come. So yeah, the Ahmadiyya would be considered like a Mahdiist movement, because the Mahdi is here. The guide is here. A Mahdi is a guide who's guiding us to the truth. So yes, Sudan had a Mahdi. Senegal had a Mahdi. Many people had this. Okay, they wanted to know about 12. So yeah, there's a difference between the Ismailis and the Ashris. So the Ashris have 12 imams, and the Ismailis have 7 imams. So these are the kind of the descendants of the Prophet of Islam who have validity and carry this chain. So the standard Shias, most Shias are what they call Ashri or 12ers, and the 7s are Ismaili, and it ends with Ismail.
Okay. Yeah, there's a whole chart up here I posted on the screen. So
lots of Lughat Arabiya, lots of Arabic here.
So it goes Sunni, Shia, Khawarij.
It's the Khawarij. The Khawarij.
Okay, good. With that, we're going to say goodbye. We're going to go to the debate, and we'll be back for the after show. The debate's starting right now. If you all get a redirect, I hope you enjoyed the content. I think it was informative today. I learned a lot today, I think. But so I am going to do my end screen and then say goodbye.